Now, I'm not usually afraid of tiny spaces. But there's something about the crisscross metal grills, the sound of footsteps on the wooden boards, the creaks. I'm in a secret corridor, concealed within one of Singapore's most storied landmarks. It's where the nation's most feared criminals met their fate. It feels so forbidding, knowing that there were once heinous criminals who walked through these very hallways. Through the years, many of Singapore's old buildings have made way for progress. But tucked within the city's vibrant landscape lie worlds preserved, offering a rare glimpse into Singapore's past.
This painting actually changed the destiny of Singapore.
This was really, quite awe-inspiring. Sitting in such a huge courtroom, seeing, probably one of the most dramatic murder trials ever to take place.
So you see the crowd, it's a big crowd. There was no policeman, there was no crowd control. So everyone has come here. This is something very new.
Today, the Marina Bay Sands has become synonymous with Singapore. It's the crown jewel of our skyline, very much like the Eiffel Tower in Paris or the Empire State Building in New York. But construction for this place only started in 2006. It was completed in 2010. What dominated our skyline in those early yesteryears? What landmarks stood out before all these skyscrapers came along? I'm sifting through the archives, looking for defining views of Singapore from the early to mid-20th century. These were the sights that once defined daily life, painting the skyline of a growing city under British rule. But there's one particular view that keeps appearing. I can't help but notice how often the Padang and Supreme Court are popping up. It seems like once upon a time, they were really Singapore's most iconic landmarks. Built in 1939, the former Supreme Court stands in the heart of Singapore's civic district. Its classical facade and imposing dome are reminders of the nation's colonial past and played a pivotal role in Singapore's journey as a newly independent nation. For over 6 decades, it served as the highest court in the land where the country's most significant trials unfolded. The building was celebrated as the finest in the peninsula with a reported cost of $1.75 million. But it turns out the project wasn't as extravagant as it seemed. According to the articles here, it seems like there were cost-cutting measures involved in building it. I wonder, why was that done? To find out more, I meet Julian Davison, an architectural historian who has spent time studying the Supreme Court. He tells me that this 5,000 square meter building was the last example of classical architecture built in Singapore. When it opened in 1939, the 4-story tall building held 4 courts, and it was considered one of the most magnificent courthouses in Southeast Asia at that time. As grand and imposing as it still appears today, there's more to it than meets the eye.
What appears to be stone on the outside is actually fake. It's something called granulite.
Julian explains that this stone-like finish is called Shanghai plaster, a popular choice in local construction from the 1920s to the 1960s.
And it consists of pulverized granite mixed up with cement and then sort of plastered, and it can be molded, and it looks just like stone. So you get that on the cheap.
The use of alternative materials to mimic more expensive finishes also applied to some features inside the building.
When we come to the interior, and there was another innovation, and that was rubber tiles. And they were very hard-wearing, and they looked a bit like marble.
It was a practical choice. Not only were they more affordable, their sound absorption quality also made them ideal for the courtrooms. When the building was transformed into the National Gallery in 2015, the rubber tiles were replaced with real marble, but the design was preserved. This is a grand structure in Singapore's landscape. Why cut on costs for materials?
The colonial administration was always strapped for cash. There've been a lot of big building works. Clifford Pier in 1930, Hill Street Police Station in 1934, Kallang Airport in 1937. Money was thin on the ground. But of course, it was a very important building. It really represents the majesty and might of imperialism, so it had to look impressive.
Traces of imperial grandeur remain preserved within the building. Julian is taking me to a former courtroom, now a gallery housing Southeast Asian art, to show me a unique original feature that has been carefully kept intact.
Courtrooms, they're a bit like theatre. You just have to look at this semi-dome. And what's interesting about that is it's not just a decorative element. Nowadays, we're used to everything being electrified, microphones. But in those days, we were just relying on acoustics. This shape acted as a kind of megaphone.
Oh, wow.
And projected the judge's voice out into the court.
Julian has led me through the former Supreme Court's corridors and courtrooms. But I want to know what it was like to be a judge or lawyer actually working in these hallowed halls.
So, Reuben, let's take a walk here. And of course, this bridge didn't exist in 1939, but being so high up now, is that we're actually much closer to all the architectural features like these wonderful Corinthian columns.
I meet Kevin, a law professor who began his career here as a young law pupil in the 1960s. He tells me the building was like a confusing labyrinth filled with secret routes. Today, he is taking me to explore one of these exclusive paths reserved for Chief Justices. As the judiciary's highest-ranking official, the Chief Justice is responsible for the operation of the entire legal system.
This whole place was a car park. This was the entrance, the private entrance of the Chief Justice. So his car would have come from there,
Okay.
and then it will come in here and let him off.
Yes.
And then he would have gone inside,
Right.
up his private elevator to his office upstairs. This is an old photograph. You see the lift is here, which is just down here. And in those days, they had to put up this sign, Chief Justice's private entrance. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Don't worry, he's not here anymore. We won't be prosecuted. I must warn you, it's very tight.
The lift leading to the Chief Justice's office has been preserved in its original form.
Private shaft.
Collapsible gate. Come.
Yeah, okay.
After you, Reuben.
All right. Kevin tells me that only 2 people are allowed in the lift at any one time.
Wow. I get what they mean now when they said only 2 people can fit in here.
So the chief would have come in here with the orderly. And as you can see, if you look at these wonderful wood panels and so on, this is the same lift that was here in 1939 when it opened. Of course, it's been restored and cleaned up, but the mechanism and all that is original.
The lift opens directly into an exhibition space. a room that once served as the Chief Justice's chamber. Every Chief Justice used this room as their office, including Wee Chong Jin, who passed away in 2005. He was Singapore's first local Chief Justice and the longest serving in the entire Commonwealth.
He was a pioneer. Wee Chong Jin was the first Asian member of the Singapore Bar to be appointed to the High Court bench. Now that's quite remarkable because he was very, very young at that time. He was in fact about 40 years old.
That's roughly 10 years younger than the typical age for appointment to the High Court bench. Over his 27 years as Chief Justice, this room became a second home to Wee Chong Jin.
I have an old photograph from 1985. Actually, this is the only photograph we have of Wee Chong Jin in his full robes, standing proudly in this room. You will see that the bookshelves which line this wall are still here. Of course, these portraits are all gone.
Today, gallery visitors pass through daily. But Kevin explains this was once the most private space in the building, accessible to only a select few. Kevin brings me to courtroom number 4 next.
Back in 1982, when I started my law studies at NUS, there was a very huge trial that consumed public attention. And this was the trial of Adrian Lim and his 2 wives who were charged with murder for kidnapping and then murdering these young children as sacrifices to the goddess Kali. I actually sat in that corner of the gallery and witnessed this particular trial. Adrian Lim, his neighbor, was giving testimony. One question which legal counsel asked him was, you know, if you live near to Adrian Lim, weren't you afraid of him? Weren't you afraid of all these gods that he was worshipping? And in the most dramatic flourish, this witness started unbuttoning his shirt. He pulled out an armful of amulets and he said in Hokkien, his cannot compare with mine. In other words, the power, the spiritual power or whatever of the gods that Adrian Lim was worshipping couldn't beat those that were embodied in these Buddhist amulets that he had. And of course, the courtroom burst out laughing.
What was that feeling that you had as you sat there? Was there like a sense of awe, a sense of inspiration?
That time, this was really, quite awe-inspiring. Sitting in such a huge courtroom, seeing one of the most dramatic murder trials ever to take place. Many of us thought, yes, maybe we could spend our life doing something like this.
Listening to Kevin's stories and walking through these preserved courtrooms and corridors has been a fascinating experience.
Back then, it was just rows and rows of tables, and at the other end, you had the elevated platforms where the judges were. It almost felt like a scene out of a Netflix drama.
I wonder, what other secrets await me in this historical landmark? My search for Singapore's iconic 1930s vistas has led me to the former Supreme Court. I've heard that hidden corridors lie within the building, once seen only by a select few, until now.
That used to be where the judges' chambers were.
56-year-old Sami worked as a court stenographer from 1993 to 2005. He tells me that before the accused were brought into the courtroom, this was where they waited.
This is a place that those facing the death penalty or charged with treason, those kind of serious offences, this would be their last interaction with reality.
The cell is bare. Just a bench and a squat toilet. The flush system was outside and not inside.
They don't get to touch anything at all.
This was to prevent the accused from fashioning weapons or tools that could be used to escape or cause harm. Sami explains that they were led from these cells straight to the prisoner dock in the courtroom 1 floor up, away from the public eye. Today, only one person is allowed on these steps at a time, as this staircase is the original structure built in 1937.
So as they make their way, there's a prison officer in front, and the prisoner is kept very close contact, and the other prison officers behind. Then they go up all the way.
I mean, just standing here and hearing the tales, it really sends a chill down my spine.
As a stenographer, Sami's office was far removed from these dim, narrow corridors. But he recalls a time when his work required him to be in close proximity to the accused.
The one time we actually accompanied them here was to check their mics, because in court some of them were very, very soft-spoken. The prisoners, like the accused persons, don't have any sense of reality. They only see corridors, and then they see white walls, and they see a concrete floor. And that's the life they're used to in Changi Prison.
Beyond these original steps and the trapdoor was the courtroom, one that was used for 7 decades, from 1937 to 2011. As the accused emerged from below, they would have been confronted by the curious gaze of the audience, the imposing figure of the judge, and their fate hanging in the balance.
The accused persons, they will be tied to metal bars. You know, there'll be like a blockade to prevent them from having any kind of contact with anyone. And then the judge is seated that circular area, elevated platform. Then the witness stand is over there, and we court officers would be just over there.
How does it feel like being back here after all these years?
I miss the place, the people, the memories that we made. And this is my first time back, Reuben. Probably will be my last as well.
Right, because you never felt the need to step back in here after it changed.
Yeah, because it's not the place, it's the people that were here. We are still connected. But this place is, I guess, moved on without us.
This photo, taken at the exact spot where I'm standing now, captures the former Supreme Court, Victoria Memorial Hall, the Singapore Cricket Club, and the old Parliament House, all of them enduring through the decades. But there's another piece of history here, an even older structure that is now linked to the former Supreme Court, though they once existed as 2 separate buildings. Digging deeper into the history of City Hall, I found out that this area was originally home to 3 grand bungalows in the 1830s. They were later transformed into hotels in the late 19th century. Eventually, 2 of them were demolished to make way for the municipal building, a department set up by the British colonizers that was responsible for managing city functions like roads, lighting, and water supply. I didn't know this before, but it turns out that the front steps of City Hall are steeped in Singapore's history. In 1945, Lord Mountbatten accepted the Japanese surrender here. Just 6 years later, in 1951, the town of Singapore was officially granted city status in a ceremony called City Day, attended by 50,000 people. In 1963, then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew stood on these steps to express his optimism for Singapore's future after the merger with Malaysia.
But let no one doubt the will, cohesion, endurance, and the discipline of our people.
I've just found something very interesting. Now, just looking through the photos, there were many crucial key events that happened at City Hall, and most of them were photographed. But one significant moment, and I mean like a really significant moment, this was the swearing in of Lee Kuan Yew as Singapore's first Prime Minister, but there's no trace of a photograph to be found anywhere online in the archives. And that really begs the question, why not?
I'm on a journey to uncover stories of buildings that have witnessed pivotal moments in Singapore's history. My exploration began at the former Supreme Court, which has now led me here to City Hall.
Now, I'm very confident that this is the exact same place that we're seeing in this picture here. However, there's a huge difference. Today, we've got the former Supreme Court, we've got City Hall converging to form the National Gallery as we know it now. But back in the day, this was once an open road that people could actually walk through.
Covering nearly 10,400 square meters and rising 4 stories high, City Hall was home to key government offices in 1965, including the Prime Minister's office and the Ministry of Culture. These ministries played a vital role in shaping our national identity, disseminating information to the public, and tackling corruption during a transformative era for the nation. Xu Juan, a curator at the National Gallery, is bringing me to a very special chamber.
So, Xu Juan, I've been looking everywhere on the internet, on archives, and I just can't seem to find pictures of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew when he was first sworn in, which I believe was right here, right?
Yeah, you're right. It was indeed right here. But at that point in time, there weren't any photographers within the space. There is paintings made by Mr. Lai Kwei Fang of this event in 1959. So it was like a recreated painting based on witness recollections that Mr. Lai actually used.
Born in 1936, the late Dr. Lai was one of Singapore's most distinguished artists. In the span of his illustrious career, he carved a niche in bringing significant figures and historical moments to life through his realist oil paintings. Xu Juan explains that Dr. Lai was commissioned by the Ministry of Culture in 1992 to create 2 paintings. One capturing the moment of former Prime Minister Mr. Lee Kuan Yew taking his oath, and another from a wider vantage point, showing the guests at the ceremony.
Looking at the photos, I think it would be approximately this area, and you can deduce it based on the columns that you see here, and also like the background of this wall panel as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so if this was a camera lens, it would probably be somewhere up there.
It would be, yeah, here.
To fully grasp the details in these paintings, I need to see them up close. One is on loan to Parliament House, while the other is securely stored at the Heritage Conservation Centre. I've been granted special permission to see the painting in person. We are now in a climate-controlled storage space where the centre keeps its most important paintings and historical artifacts. Dr. Lai's painting has been taken out and displayed specially for me, so that I can examine it more closely.
So in fact, it's over 2 meters high, actually. Mr. Lai took 6 months to actually find out about all these details within the room, including the belt that he was wearing and also the quantity of microphones on the table.
It's all these little intricate details, but is there anything that I'm not noticing here which is very special to this painting?
For me, it's also interesting that he chooses to depict Mr. Lee from the side view. So it's not so much what Mr. Lee looks like, but it's really on the act of him taking the oath, with his right hand risen up as he actually reads out his oath to be sworn in.
Seeing this painting up close, I'm struck by the intricacies, the details. It makes me wonder, how challenging was it to reconstruct an event using only first-hand accounts? Unfortunately, Dr. Lai passed away in 2022, but it seems his family are still holding on to the original sketches. So I'm going to check them out.
How many pieces do you have?
Total 3 pieces for government to choose which one they prefer.
Right.
So basically, they choose this and this.
So this is the piece that is currently on display at Parliament House. And I get to see the preparatory sketch in person. Wow. Dr. Lai's daughter, Stephanie, goes on to explain that preparatory sketches play a crucial role in an artist's creative process. For her father, they were a way to experiment with light, perspective, and composition. These also served as proposals before the final commissioned pieces were created.
And there's one that is unpublished right behind here.
Okay.
Rather than focusing solely on former Prime Minister Mr. Lee Kuan Yew taking his oath, it captures the faces of those attending the ceremony. Familiar figures like former ministers Goh Keng Swee, Toh Chin Chye, and S. Rajaratnam, all bearing witness to this historic moment. I can also see the interior of the City Hall chamber, preserved almost exactly as it was till this day. Mrs. Lai tells me her husband's goal was to capture the ceremony exactly as it happened, almost like a photograph. There was no room for artistic interpretation as every detail came directly from interviews with the attendees.
文化部就给他一些你那个市政厅的相片，没有这些人物，就是他的里面的构造的相片。
不是这个照片，
没有
是里面的照片。
啊，里面的建筑的照片，那么他才构思出来了，想象啊。
哇，不同的。
不同的那个颜色。
I am struck by the thought and artistry behind capturing such a pivotal moment in Singapore's history. These sketches don't just preserve a scene, they immortalize a defining chapter, allowing future generations to connect with the birth of modern Singapore. Besides the swearing-in ceremony, I wonder, what other pivotal moments happened at City Hall? From my previous research, I found out that this iconic building was home to several ministries, including the Ministry of National Development and the newly established Ministry of Culture in the 1960s. This is an audio recording of former Deputy Prime Minister Mr. Toh Chin Chye recounting the process of designing the Singapore flag.
It may be a symbol, but I think these are important symbols. Design of the flag, of course, is well known now. So the split crest essentially was put up together with the help of an artist in the Ministry of Culture. His first name, I think, was Joseph, a young man. I gave him the ideas to produce the design.
Who was Joseph? This young artist entrusted with the monumental task of designing our national symbols. In 1959, as Singapore gained self-governance under British rule, there was an urgent need for a flag to represent our young nation. Leading this task was then Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Toh Chin Chye. I found out that he enlisted a 25-year-old artist, Joseph Teo, to bring his vision to life. Mr. Teo passed away in 2015, so I'm meeting his daughter, Lena, who has preserved some precious items from his time at the ministry.
So this is a photo of my dad.
Including this photo of him receiving the Public Administration Medal in 1963 for his work in creating Singapore's national symbols.
I wouldn't be surprised if he even designed these medals himself. These are all, part of his duties as an artist. He was one of the earliest people to receive, because he joined the service in '57, when he was 23 years old.
Lena reveals that her father was a self-taught artist who eventually became the chief artist at the Ministry of Culture, a position he held until his retirement in 1984. When the ministry was dissolved in 1985, the role of chief artist disappeared with it, making Mr. Teo Singapore's only chief artist in its history. Lena shows me his appointment letter.
Chief artist has more than adequate visualizing skills and artistic expertise in the following fields. So like the flags, the crests, medals, certificates, badges, letterheads, banners, medallions, greeting cards.
This is almost like a job description together with a CV.
But the most important assignment in his entire career is undoubtedly the design of the national flag.
You would have the flag with the measurements on how to actually draw the flag. Position of the stars vis-a-vis the crescent.
Red represents the universal bond of humanity. White symbolizes purity, the crescent moon signifies a rising young nation, and the 5 stars stand for democracy, peace, progress, justice, and equality.
Right, you don't realize how precise it has to be.
Yes, the flag and the size follows an international standard.
I'm guessing that Mr. Teo must have designed the flag while working at City Hall in the late 1950s and 60s. I wonder where his office was located exactly. Lena follows me to see if she can help track it down. She remembers visiting his office as a student, but it's been decades since she last set foot inside this building.
So how do you feel walking in through those doors once again?
Yeah. And it's interesting because this place has changed so much.
Right.
So it was an open air kind of thing.
Sure.
And if memory serves me right, I think this is the section that faces the Padang. Then I would think that Dad's office, which is in this photo, would be somewhere up there facing the Padang.
With the photos as our only guide, Lena finally locates her father's office, which is now just a dead end and an empty corridor.
If you look at this, right, it must be pretty high because you could see all the way out and you could see the sea, right? But I did notice that it was at one corner of the building. So if you look at the building from the outside, it could be anywhere in this area, I think.
While key spaces like the City Hall chamber and notable architectural details were conserved during the transformation into National Gallery Singapore, most of the former offices were removed to create space for new galleries. Her father's office might be gone, but Lena's memories of City Hall are still as vivid as ever.
Visiting this place actually brings back a lot of memories of Dad. The kind of things he did in this building in his capacity as the chief artist. Familiarity now is tinged with this unfamiliarity because, of the changes.
I truly enjoyed just reminiscing with her. It was definitely a very rewarding and memorable experience.
My time with Lina reminds me that every historic building carries the stories of people who gave it life. Her father's work on the national flag is more than just a part of history. It's a legacy that keeps City Hall's spirit alive and connects us to its past in a meaningful way.
Looking at these old photos of City Hall and the former Supreme Court, it reminds me that this was once a place for officials to plan policies that would govern Singapore.
But what about spaces created specifically for the people? I don't have to look far, because just across the road from City Hall was one such place. Today, it's known as Victoria Theatre and Concert Hall, but it began as two separate buildings. The Town Hall, built in 1862, was a place where the public could come together to discuss politics and advocate for changes under the British colonial administration. In 1905, the Victoria Memorial Hall was added to the compound to mark the passing of Queen Victoria. Built as a public hall, it addressed the growing need for a larger space to host public functions and general entertainment.
In the fall of 1941, the Japanese Imperial Army set its expansionist gaze on the impregnable British colony of Singapore.
But the lively gatherings and entertainment at these halls seemed to come to an end when World War II reached Singapore's shores. Or did they? Because I've discovered something surprising in the archives. The two buildings actually hosted concerts during the Japanese occupation, performed by a group called the Shonan Symphony Orchestra. Who were they? And why were concerts held during the war? To find out more, I meet a writer who has managed to uncover some of the answers to these questions.
I find it hard myself when I was researching and writing about the orchestra to even think of how this place may have been like.
Independent producer and music researcher Ming Yan has studied 20th century music in Singapore, in particular the history of the Shonan Symphony Orchestra. We are inside the Victoria Theatre where this orchestra once performed. Ming Yan explains that during the Japanese occupation, the two-story building featured a large hall with a total seating capacity of 704. These seats were once occupied by Japanese soldiers who attended the concerts. The Japanese army was known to have used dance and music as powerful propaganda tools. This could explain why they held concerts here, to boost the morale of the troops and reinforce their cause.
What was the atmosphere like in this very theatre?
From the 30s, 40s, there would be no air condition. There would be probably fans. You could probably hear the ambient sound from the outside. The chairs wouldn't have been so comfortable and plush. This whole place was filled. The concerts were, I think, 2 to 4, 5 to 7 p.m. on Sundays.
But it wasn't only Japanese troops who attended these concerts.
There's some accounts of the troops in the audience and civilians sitting in the same audience with them. This program is a mixture of both light classical music and also Japanese music. It opens with an overture by the German composer Weber. It's a very popular work from his opera Euryanthe. Then there's a waltz by Franz Lehár, Gold and Silver Waltz. It's music of some class. It's a statement of power, it's a statement of superiority. It's a very cleverly constructed program. If you ask me, then it follows by a Japanese work from Kabuki. If you look at the house programs, they will always feature Japanese songs. Because there was this whole idea that how do I share my culture? How do I show that my culture is rich, if not even better than the Western culture?
Till today, the origins of the Shonan Symphony Orchestra remain a mystery. No one knows who founded it. But oral history interviews have uncovered details about some of the musicians who played in it. One of these musicians was Gay Wan Gui, a Singaporean violinist.
They felt that if you are a musician, somehow they had a feeling that you must be a good chap. I felt that as long as I played music and I could sing a few of their songs, they will not have any ill feeling towards me or my family. That he would keep me, protect me better than a gun.
He mentions the fact that if they know that you're making music, they know you're not a troublemaker, then the act of music making is symbolic of something else. You're not just entertaining people, no? Music has something beyond entertainment. It speaks of a particular value, a particular social act that transcends the pure entertainment itself. And that's interesting.
Moving beyond the war years, I find out that Victoria Theatre, or Victoria Memorial Hall as it was once known, hosted many events that played a key role in Singapore's history. Like in 1963, when the first TV station, Television Singapura, was started. The launch was held here, and it was a thrilling moment as many Singaporeans experienced moving images for the very first time. Manchor Singh, a camera assistant at Television Singapura, was there to capture this historic moment.
So I came here with a group of camera crew, helping them to set up the camera equipment to the strategic area where the actual event was to take place.
Inside Victoria Memorial Hall, 17 television sets were set up for 300 guests. And to make sure that no one was left out, more televisions were placed outside the hall and at 52 community centres across the island. Even though it wasn't part of his job scope, Mr. Man, an avid photographer, thought the momentous occasion deserved to be immortalized in still photographs.
This is a photo which I took from the balcony of the Victoria Memorial Hall. Yes. So it's a big crowd. There was no policeman, there was no crowd control. So everyone has come here. This is something very new. So this one, you can see the word inaugural or pilot service of Television Singapura today at 5:30 p.m. So this is the time where the TV started.
The first broadcast was a 90-minute program that opened with a 15-minute documentary.
And a Happy New Year to you too.
I've been exploring landmark buildings that carry the stories of Singapore's history. Like the former Supreme Court, where defining trials shaped the careers of legal professionals like Kevin. And City Hall, where a young artist played a part in crafting our nation's identity. Lastly, Victoria Theatre and Concert Hall, where music and television brought hope in difficult times. These buildings aren't just structures. Through the families of people who worked in them, like Dr. Lai and Mr. Teo, their stories live on, connecting us to the past. In the next episode, I explore the structures of Singapore's industrial past and find out how the fate of the nation rested on its ability to power up.